with it.
Maybe. I don't know. Are we ready?
Yeah. I'm going to intro it and say the chapter title. Or I'm going to intro chapter 2. And you can say debunking the vulnerability myths.
Yeah.
And then I'll say we go over 4 myths.
4 minutes.
Myths.
Oh, that's like a 4-minute episode.
I don't know. We really will be talking it. Talking it five times fast.
5 times speed.
Yep. See you next time.
That's why we're besties.
Bye.
Okay. Good stuff.
They'll be able to tell we're batch recording because we are in the same, and my braid's getting more and more ridiculous as the night goes.
This side is like straight, and this side is naturally funky.
Okay. We should do before and after pictures like at bachelorette parties. Before and after batch recording.
Batch recording.
Batch
parties.
Look at that. I think it's time we start.
We gotta, before all this good stuff doesn't get recorded.
Here we go, episode 30. This is Daring Greatly by Brene Brown, and today we're talking about chapter 2.
Yes, chapter 2 is titled Debunking the Vulnerability Myths.
It is titled that. Yep.
And how many are there, Brooke?
There are 4.
That is correct.
You can't see the hand signals, but there are 4.
They're coming at my face. So before she starts the chapter, Brooke, she talks about...
You said it.
It's not what I meant. You were thinking it.
Wow. The end. See you next week.
Bye.
Oh my gosh, it's awesome.
Okay.
Carry on.
Yes. So the thing that makes vulnerability, there's lots. But one thing that makes it uncomfortable is because it's uncertain, right?
Yeah.
Or we think it could go a terrible way. So when you're put yourself out there, you don't know what the response is going to be. So if you're the first one in a relationship to say I love you, you're like, crap, what if they say that's nice?
Oh my gosh, like off the Klickner episode. We had them for the Enneagram. It was episode 15, I think. But they talked about how he said, I love you. What'd she say? She said, thank you.
Yeah. Like real life.
And yeah.
Not
and then
just movies.
hours later, she was like, I love you too. And he was like, oh my gosh, why did it take you so long?
Because she's in number 5. She likes to process her feelings on her own.
Right.
Or like if you go into a job situation and you ask for a promotion and you have to like kind of justify by saying how much you do and why you're deserving. What if they tell you no?
What's the worst that could happen? No? Okay, thanks.
Yeah, but then you're like, crap, am I not those awesome things?
No, you are. That either means something on the other end isn't ready, or sometimes they are ready. You need to be in that position, but the budgeting is done for the year kind of thing, so you have to wait until... Or maybe there's another place that has that position. So it's not that you aren't those things. It could just be there's something in the works, something coming. Just keep your eyes and ears open.
Yeah. So this is how she leads into chapter 2, and it falls nicely with the first myth about vulnerability is weakness. And so in those situations, one way to interpret that is if I put myself out there and they tell me no, then look, I must be flawed and weak. But really, like you just said, that would not be true.
I gotta tell you, vulnerability, weakness was the definition for me up until a few months ago. Like, crying was a weakness in my eyes. And so, I mean, all those things are not right. So if you're a counselor out there, like, And so when I told my counselor these things, she was like, ha ha ha, you silly layman, let me tell you what is happening. So at one point in a session, I did start crying, and then I stopped crying, and then she was like, what's going on? I'm like, dang, I cried. She's like, why is that bad? I don't know, because it's weak. Why is it weak? I don't know. She's like, see? Doesn't make sense. Yeah. So that was weird.
Doesn't sound like you completely believed her, but it was
right. And so then
yeah.
What also helped was when my kids started crying. And so there's a difference between, so we make sure we either say it's whining or crying. Like crying is normal and okay, and you can do that anytime you feel like you need to. Whining is not okay. So we try to always make sure we give the kids the word whenever they're doing either or. Like if you hit your face, you're going to be crying, not whining, honestly.
That is a really good parenting tip because, again, kids don't interpret what you mean, always. They hear what you say.
Right.
And so when you're telling them, stop crying, don't cry, you shouldn't be crying because they didn't get the toy they wanted in the checkout aisle.
That's whining.
They generalize it to,
right.
My mom says I can't cry. So, careful. That's a good one.
Right.
She goes on to talk about, we're really quick to say vulnerability is a sign of weakness, but TED Talks, for example, there's some really powerful ones. Goalcast is another really good motivational, inspirational kind of resource to go check out. And those people are being super vulnerable, and we admire and applaud them for that. And their messages are powerful, and they're being vulnerable. But then when she turns the question to the audience and says, what about when you're vulnerable? They're like, oh, no, I don't do that because that's weak. But you just said how powerful and moving it was when you saw someone else's vulnerability.
Right. That's what we were talking about last week with you being vulnerable can help lead someone to some sort of successful with whatever it is. Whether you're getting them out of a pit because you've shown them the roadmap or you need to do it for your sake because that's part of the healing process kind of thing.
I like too how she talks about vulnerability is actually the birthplace for love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. I mean, a lot of creativity has come from taking risks.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a style right now. The crop top?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not doing that too vulnerable. But man, it looks good on some other people.
This mom rocking it.
Yeah.
Boy.
No, but like love. Like you gotta ask that girl out and then, say yes when he asks you out.
What's the worst that could happen? Nothing.
Yeah.
The worst that could happen is what's already happening. Nothing.
Don't be vulnerable skydiving or jumping out of a plane with parachute. No, because there are some worse case scenarios.
Yeah, right, yeah.
That's not vulnerability.
Again,
that's
be logical.
Stupidity. No,
Yes.
I'm just kidding. It's just
well,
not for
I
me.
mean-
It's just not for me. Okay, so I love, she does these sentence stems. In the last chapter, it was never blank enough, and we filled it in like never good enough, never smart enough, never fill in the blank as it sees fit. So on this one, it's defining vulnerability. So again, she's giving some examples. Vulnerability is asking for help. Vulnerability is starting your own business. Vulnerability is standing up for yourself. And it's like, man, you probably encourage people to stand up for themselves. And you know that on that side for you, it might take a lot of strength for some people to do that. So again, is standing up for yourself a sign of weakness? No, but it requires vulnerability. So that's what these examples
I
are.
like how some of them it's both, like getting fired, firing people. Like both of those are two very vulnerable things, and they're all opposite ends of the spectrum. It also talks about initiating sex with my husband, initiating sex with my wife. Like these are all things people have said over the past 20 years of her research. People are actually feeling this and thinking this. So if you think you're the only one who is vulnerable trying something new, then you're wrong, because it's in this book. Someone said that in her research.
And that's where it goes back to, we've said before, wise counsel. So first, identifying what vulnerability looks like to you, and then taking that to wise counsels, a trusted friend, maybe someone in the church, maybe a therapist or counselor, someone that you can trust. And if they say it back to you, maybe you'll realize that that's not weakness. It's actually there's strength in there.
Yeah.
So, gosh, they go on to talk about how does vulnerability feel.
Ugh.
Oh,
Terrible.
terrible. Not sucking it in anymore. Yeah, swimsuit season, all summer. No, it's where courage and fear meet.
I love that one because being brave or having courage is being scared and doing it anyway.
I like this one. This is more of what I would have said. Sweaty palms and a racing heart.
Mm-hmm.
Awkward and scary,
Mm-hmm.
but it makes you feel alive.
That's true.
I love all these. And she said the answer, of course, that appeared over and over was naked.
Yes.
Vulnerability makes you feel like you're naked on stage and hoping for applause rather than laughter.
Oh my gosh.
I'm hoping just everyone's blind. But anyways, I don't know. That's not a feeling I want to engage in very often. But like the reward could be awesome, right?
Well, we can go into the whole marriage aspect of that, but even just being okay with yourself. That doesn't mean settle. That doesn't mean be unhealthy, but there's a point wherever like the inner critic starts talking and you have to understand when to shut that down. So again, being self-affirmations, that kind of stuff. I have a friend who writes down 5 self-affirmations every day about herself, and that's awesome. You're awesome.
She wraps up this discussion on defining vulnerability and not it being a weakness, it being a strength. I just thought this nerdy was interesting, that the dictionary, it comes from 2 Latin words meaning to wound, incapable of being wounded, or open to attack or damage. And so those words do make it sound like a weakness, but it goes back to...
And maybe that's where the negative connotation came from.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
But maybe, again, as you can see, being vulnerable does lead to a lighter path. I know it makes me feel lighter whenever I get something off my chest that I needed to, or I'm working through something and there's a breakthrough, and all of that feels great. It's all the ugly stuff in between, all that vulnerable, that stuff is rough, but it's totally worth it.
Yeah. So she just goes on to again say where this myth that vulnerability is weakness comes from. And so talking about like who you really are might not be enough for other people. Won't have all the bells and whistles and isn't very impressive. And she's going on to speak for her TED Talk. So she's giving that personal anecdote there. But what she noticed as she was the closing speaker, which is supposed to be like the grand finale. And gosh.
She didn't know she was going to be it either. And they were like, oh, you're the closing one. She's like, what? Excuse me?
Yeah. And so when you watch like other people go first, I rather go like not very first because I want to like kind of get some strategy from watching a couple people, but I don't want to be last. I want to go towards the front and get it over with because of my nerves. So in track, I ran the mile, the 2 mile, and the 800. So the first, the middle, and the last event. Oh, it was awful because I couldn't do anything.
You couldn't
sit
relax.
there. No. Like some people would run the first race or do the first event, and the rest of the track meet, they just hung out and ran around being crazy.
Not fair in
First world problems. So, what she noticed is in the TED Talks, so many people's TED Talks that everyone loved, they were being very vulnerable. They were talking about all the times they failed. These very successful entrepreneurs were saying, yeah, this has made me successful, but here's all the
stuff you didn't
failures.
see.
Yeah. And so sharing that vulnerability then again is inspiring. And the coming back, man, when
Yes.
you've been knocked down, like that makes your story that much more better.
Right.
Much
Agree.
more better.
Works.
Yeah. So she talked about reframing the question from, like you said, what's the worst that could happen, to what's the best possible thing that could happen. And she even used the question, what's worth doing even if I fail?
I love that.
Yeah.
Let me say it again.
What's worth doing even if I fail?
Heck yeah.
Like-
Ask that girl out.
Do it.
Worth it.
I love playing soccer, even if I have a terrible game. It's still worth it.
Yeah.
Even if I let the other team score somehow. Ricochet off my shins. Massive shin guards. I don't care. I want to do it. Is there anything you can think of that you enjoy doing? Doesn't even matter if you fail.
I think, reading out loud is one that I struggle with. So I think it's also good because I also teach reading out loud, so struggle together, but the tactics we're using, the only way to get better is just to do it. So leading from the front.
But that's pretty awesome. So again, she challenges you to value your own vulnerability as much as you value it in others. So I've definitely caught myself different times being like, man, I wish I was brave. Again, that's the word I come back to. I wish I was as brave as she was.
That last part you read about, what is it? Can you value your own vulnerability as much as you value it in others? So that has stuck with me too. So whenever someone says something big, like we've been struggling to have kids and blah 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 blah, the group that like our book study or our CG or whatever group it is, where we've been friends for 16 years or however long, we always talk about like, thank you for saying that, you were so brave for saying that, we're proud of you for saying that, and then the whole, do you want a cheerleader, someone to hype you up, do you want someone to hug you, what do you need after that? But first things first, that's a big deal that you said that. So maybe we can encourage you to do that next time someone shares something with you, and they have felt led to share. Thank them for their bravery, because that was very scary. So
and then she hopes that instead of having this naked feeling when you're being vulnerable, that after, practicing it and changing your mindset, that you'll have this quiet sense of freedom mixed in with a little battle fatigue. So gosh, just not having to pretend to be something you're not.
yes,
Not trying to hide all your imperfections.
yes,
Not having to pretend to be perfect or on all the time.
or the way I operate this way is because of this one thing that nobody knows about.
Yeah.
So if I just said that, people would automatically be like, oh, I get it now. I totally get it. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
It's as easy as saying something.
When I had my 3 miscarriages, I kind of wanted to keep it like here. Part of me didn't want to hear other people like, oh, I had a miscarriage too. Like, but this is mine. Like, whatever. But that was probably Satan, because the more I shared, I actually felt better. Because again, I was talking to people that had been like through it. But then I also got like some suggestions on like different paths to take to try to, have another baby. And so a lot of good can come out of having those conversations that not only might you help others, but other people can help you. But if you don't tell anybody, then they don't know.
So I'm going to walk through this conversation. So let's say, how did you, thank you for sharing, by the way, that's a big deal. Look at you go. You go, girl.
Vulnerable.
Being all vulnerable and
Naked.
stuff. And you should see this side of the mic. We'll stop there. Okay, anyway.
I'm dressed.
Okay, so let's say you opened up and did tell someone that. At one point you said you didn't want to hear someone else say me too.
Yeah.
So what did you, so when, I'm trying to think of, how does one approach you when that happens?
Oh, there's no right way.
There's no right way, it all sucks.
It all sucks.
Got you. Okay,
But
so
you can
then,
tell people that you want to just be pissed about it.
and that's fine.
And you just
okay.
want to
yeah,
be sad.
Great.
Don't
Okay.
cheer me up. And if
So-
it happened to you, I'm very sorry, but I want to be sad.
Okay, so you had the wherewithal to say that up front.
Well, no. This is hindsight.
Obviously you're grieving.
This is hindsight. Hindsight, I coulda, shoulda, woulda said.
I want to be mad right now.
Actually, I did say
I want to
that.
be. You told me, like I don't understand right now.
yeah.
I'm angry right now.
I
I'm sad right now.
had to tell my teaching team members because I lost one at school and I had to leave. And
I
was
remember this.
Woo.
Yeah.
And then they're like, "What's going on with her?" But I told my partner, I was like, "Don't tell anybody." And so, anyways, at the next team meeting or next day or something, I just told them, and I told him, I said, "I'm mad with the big guy right now. I don't want to talk about it. I'm not ready for it, but I will be." So,
And that's I mean that takes guts too. Even if you're just saying those raw feelings like this. Okay, I gotta function. So hang on.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
I think that's great because sometimes that's all you need to say.
Yep.
And then so then that happened. So then how would someone know? Would they just be like, hey?
Oh yeah, they
Or
just
like,
trickled in.
Or like,
and
you
filled
let me
out
know
the-
when you're ready.
Eh.
Or You're never gonna be ready.
Some of them are
so-
older and wiser, and so they'd be like, not right then, but you know, a few days later, whatever. They're like, I know you don't want to hear this, so
But-
prefacing
Okay,
with
preface. Good
It's
to know.
like, great. Not coming in with, I have the answer for you. They're like, and I don't want to hear this, but blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
And I'm praying for you. Short, sweet, and then subject change.
Yep, got you.
Yep.
Okay, and that's what worked for you.
Otherwise you cry, and
Uh-huh.
then you can't,
And
and
then
then
you gotta-
everyone knows you've been crying.
And then the kids
they
walk
ask
in
you
from
why you're
recess, and you're like,
crying.
what?
I got something in both my eyes.
Allergies. Allergies everywhere.
Yep.
Well, thank you for sharing those tips.
You're
And
welcome.
again, everyone handles it differently, so it's also okay to say, how do you want me to talk to you about this? And if they don't know, then you can say, well, want to try something? And if you get mad at me, I'll walk away.
Yes. I think just
Don't do nothing. I think that's what Stephanie Frenchers talked about. Don't do nothing. Don't sit there and say
Yeah.
nothing.
because then she talked about how she lost her mom, and the first time she went back to church, it was very overwhelming.
Mhm.
But she also was kind of glad she went. But it was hard because everyone's looking at her with those eyes
Mhm.
and giving their condolences. And then we were asking, so is the right thing just to like play it cool? And she goes, well, then I probably would have been mad that no one said anything.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's episode 18.
Yeah.
So she talks about grief, losing her mom. So those are a lot of practical tips in that area, if you need that.
all right, myth
That's a good
number
one.
2. Yeah, I do what I can. Myth number 2.
Carrying the team.
That's why
Carrying
she
the
keeps
team.
me around. All right. So myth number 2 is I don't do vulnerability.
Mm-mm-mm.
You know, so
I don't do it.
you know that sounds pretty great. Like guys don't do vulnerability, or I'm a lawyer and I eat vulnerability for breakfast. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So the sad thing is that it's unavoidable. Everyone gets
Yep.
to go through it.
Just like any trial, no one's exempt.
Yep. So, what does she go on to say? We may need to pause it here.
Noted.
I got talking on the other track and stopped reading.
Farron, I'm
again.
proud of you.
Oh, well, thank you.
That's the first time you said it on here, right?
I don't know, maybe.
I think so. Good for you. You can go, girl.
Sure. If you choose.
tips.
Sure,
Oh
I
my
think
God,
everyone
for
knows
the
it
boys
too,
and all.
so, it's also okay to say in that area. I think sounds pretty great. Like guys don't do vulnerability, or I'm a lawyer and I eat vulnerability for breakfast.
That was good. I'm ready when you are.
Oh, like, so it starts here and it ends here. So
Oh, no.
I'm like, okay. So life is vulnerable. Look back at the list of examples.
Uh-huh.
Blah, blah, blah. When we operate from the belief that we don't do vulnerability, it's helpful to ask ourselves the following questions. If we truly don't know the answers, we can bravely ask someone who we're close with. What do I do when I feel emotionally exposed? How do I behave when I'm feeling uncomfortable? How willing am I to take emotional risks?
So becoming aware.
Of how you deal with your emotions.
I like it. That'll
And
be
if-
good for me. Let's read those out loud.
And if the answer is, you think we should paraphrase?
Yes.
And if the answer is that you don't share emotions, then in fact, you are not vulnerable. But isn't that the point?
Yes. Identify. That you, yes.
But then they don't do vulnerability. Where does it talk about, as you can see, regardless of our willingness to do vulnerability, it does us. When we pretend that we can avoid vulnerability, we engage in behaviors that are often. Let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm. And this is people who might be unaware. Like they might,
Maybe we just talk about this.
yeah.
And then paraphrase.
Ready?
Yes. Alright, so as Brene Brown does such a good job, she gives you questions to ask yourself and kind of a self-test to see where you're at. So if you think you don't do vulnerability, some questions to answer. We'll get into those, but she also says if you don't feel like you can answer these questions, again, having a trusted friend, maybe answer those for you. But it all has to do with feeling your emotions. Do you express emotions appropriately? What are you doing when you feel emotionally exposed? And how willing are you to put yourself out there and take an emotional risk, which...
So emotional risk could be going out, asking that girl out, or it could be saying I love you first. Emotionally exposed could be you pitched this really great idea to your boss and you got crickets back. Like, ooh!
Yeah.
Or I mean, for me with this podcast, like, what if nobody cares?
Yeah.
But
Our parents listen.
thanks, Mom and Dad. But that's a fleeting thought now because I know that we're called to do this. So if we're called to do it, it's not wrong.
Yeah.
And you'll listen to me and I'll listen to you and it'll be great.
Oh.
Yay! No crickets.
It's an excuse for us to hang out together.
Don't tell our husbands.
We're doing a podcast. We're documenting our friendship.
That's right.
So she goes on to just reiterate that when you pretend like you can avoid vulnerability, then it's often inconsistent with who you are. So if you don't do vulnerability, if you say, you know, I can avoid being vulnerable or I don't need to be vulnerable, that's true, but then the life you're leading is not true to who you are.
Eventually your brain's going to get confused on those sorts of things. It'll cross over to your house or cross over to your work. Something's not going to compute and you're either going to misspeak or act in a way that you don't intend to, just because your brain can't keep up with compressing the emotions like that.
I think a lot of times people feel this sense of not being happy, and it could be because they aren't living to their true selves. They have this front. And again, there could be some very valid reasons looking at your motives behind it. Is it a protection? Is it a fear base? Is it not wanting to be judged a certain way? But then, like, at what cost? So there's a whole nother discussion on happiness and being happy. But a lot of times, I think it's come from not being true to yourself.
Yeah, I mean, is there something in your head, on your heart, that if your significant other just knew, and you knew it was going to be judgment-free, would you tell him? And if it wouldn't be judgment-free, then maybe work on that first. But, I mean, if you know that they unconditionally love you, then take the risk.
And so this section is pretty small. She says in chapter 4, we'll take a closer look at this topic. So moving on to myth number 3, vulnerability is letting it all hang out.
Right. You mentioned this last episode, how it's not just shouting from the rooftop, whatever it is. It's thought out.
I picture those new bikini styles where the butt looks like the front of the bikini, but on the back, and
nope.
Maybe that I used to have I don't even know if I ever had the body to wear one of those, but all hanging out, that's what's coming to mind.
Man, I mean, if you can rock that, you go, girl or guy.
Yeah.
But I can't. I don't have that confidence. I'm not willing to be vulnerable enough
Sometimes
in that area.
It's just nice to, if you have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. No. Anywho, the point here is that she doesn't want it to be misconstrued that being vulnerable means airing all your dirty laundry on Facebook for everyone to see, that there are right ways to go about being vulnerable. She gives a story about her daughter. She told a friend at recess something that embarrassing that had happened to her, and by lunch, all the girls in her grade level knew. And so, you know, here she had an experience where she was vulnerable with a friend, and that trust factor was, you know, broken. And she's like, she could have said, so never confide in anybody to protect yourself. But instead they had a really great conversation on how to build trust in other people.
Right. They talked about the analogy of the marble jar friends. So Brene Brown was like, what? And so she talked about, like, you know, the daughter said, every time they do something that I can trust, or a story I tell them, or something they remember, I put a marble in the jar, like mentally, not actual jar for Susie, jar for Jimmy, jar
Maybe for those non-education.
Right.
If you're in education, like a class incentive, you might have a jar. And every time the class does something well, you put marbles in the jar. And when they do something maybe not so good, you can take marbles away. So reward and punishment kind of thing. So then doing this with friends.
Yes, so the mom, so Brene, first name basis, we're besties. She was like, okay, well, what is daughter's name? Ellen? All right, she was like, Ellen, so what makes a marble jar friend? And she's like, oh, well, she remembers that Grandma and Grandpa's name are Oma and Opa. She remembers, and every time she sees them, she's like, hi, Oma, hi, Opa. So again, the whole remembering significant things. I mean, just anything like that. So it's also good to think about who your marble jar friends are. I know that sounds elementary, but it's only silly if it doesn't work, right?
Yeah. So being vulnerable with trusted people.
And sometimes that takes baby steps. It's you don't want to go and drop bombs like, nice to meet you, Farron, I'm an addict. That might not be like the right way to go about it necessarily, so we're not going to air it out.
There's nothing wrong with overcoming or working on addiction. Sure. It's just, unfortunately, in society and culture, there's certain ways to lead or introduce or present yourself.
Yes, if you're building a friendship or meeting someone the first time, meeting someone at your spouse's company party, I mean, there's appropriate and inappropriate ways. If you're at an AA meeting, that's absolutely appropriate.
Yep.
So, again, knowing those parameters.
To like wearing clothes. Like, it wouldn't be appropriate to wear a swimsuit if you're going skiing, and it wouldn't be appropriate to wear a ski suit to go swimming. And so, while those both have their appropriate times,
you must not be having fun when you ski.
I don't ski. I fear for my life. That's on 2 long, skinny surfboard things. Yeah.
You got this. That I can just knee replacement.
I've watched too many like America's Funniest Home Videos and things like that where it just goes terribly wrong. So yes. Anywho. Being vulnerable. Some people put all their business out there, and some people have very eloquent way of delivering it. Everybody on Oprah.
I think it all goes.
Even Oprah.
I think it goes back to motivation. Yeah. Like, is your motivation? So I had a person at one point. This was in high school. They told me this really vulnerable thing, and I didn't know this person that well. And then they said, "Okay, you're next." And I said, what? That was not, I did not agree to this exchange. Like, I don't.
Am I supposed to tell you something?
Yeah. And they said, yes, tell me one of your secrets. And I was like, no. I don't
like old people.
I don't know you. You said that last time, or a couple episodes ago.
They didn't listen to that one.
Oh,
surprise! Go check it out.
Episode 27. But yeah, so again, there has to be some boundaries there.
Yes. So this was just, I don't even know how to set it up because I found it so I put an exclamation mark in the notes section.
Yeah, just go for it.
So hearts is love, check is like, yeah, I got you on that one. Exclamation is like, mind blown. So she said that one of let me start out. I'm just going to quote it, Brene Brown. If I had to choose the form of betrayal that emerged most frequently from my research, and that was the most dangerous in terms of corroding the trust connection, right? So you're vulnerable with people that you trust. So what would ruin that trust relationship? It would be disengagement, which we talked about in the last chapter.
Wow.
She goes on to say, because I'm thinking really like that's the big, you just kind of pushing yourself away is the biggest form of breaking our trust. She said, when the people we love or with whom we have a deep connection stop caring, stop paying attention, stop investing, and stop fighting for the relationship, trust begins to slip away and hurt starts seeping in. Disengagement triggers shame.
That's crazy. So all her research has proved this. So what it sounds like is people are saying a bunch of words that fall under the umbrella of disengagement. So it said something about betrayal. Is that where this came from?
Right. So we just had the daughter example where they shared a secret and that broke trust.
Okay, so that could be a betrayal of a friendship, betrayal of a boss to a subordinate, or a husband to wife. So think about how someone just doesn't come up and break up with you. there was a series of things that have been slowly happening, inch by inch by inch by inch, and that's disengagement.
She gave examples too, like, I may have had this conversation once, but where it's like, I miss you, I don't see you, and he's like, what do you mean? I come home from work, I'm here. I see you in the morning, we're getting the kids ready, I'm here. What more do you want? I'm here on the weekends. Yeah, but you were like outside taking care of all our property, which is a lot of work, and I love that. But that doesn't equate to, again, the word quality time.
Right. Your definition of quality time.
Right. So disengagement doesn't necessarily mean like pushing away, but you're counting minutes that aren't actual engaged in quality conversation or interaction. They even give examples like you were saying at work. So again, leaders out there, just the employees want to hear that they're doing a good job
and that you freaking have their back.
They gave the example of someone feeling like, do they even know that I work here?
Oh my gosh.
Do they know what I do?
I think I said that at one of the very early episodes of the whole podcast, that one of my higher ups didn't even know my name. She worked there multiple years.
Yeah.
What?
And so are you going to then trust or be willing to share with someone that you don't have that relationship with?
It's kind of like when someone does a walkthrough for 5 minutes, but you know, and they're from like Central, and you're just like, what?
Yeah. They didn't know me before they walked in. They were in here for a few minutes, and that 3 minutes is how they're going to remember me. They might not remember my name or what grade, but whatever happened in those 3 minutes is what they're going to remember.
What would be really funny if someone came up with a walkthrough and they could check off if it were a full moon, a Friday before a holiday, a Friday the 13th, pep rally day, long weekend coming up,
grandparents' luncheon.
How many weeks until Thanksgiving? That's what they need to check off first. That would be some really good data, and then you could compile
the teacher here?
Is the teacher here?
50 out of 100 points. Yeah.
You win.
And another thing for our parents out there, they say this is really important too with children. So while they say like, I don't want you, don't talk to me, especially at the teenage years, or I have a lot of parents say, you know, I ask them what they did at school and they say nothing. And sometimes parents are discouraged by that. But if you stopped asking them how their day was, then they might feel like, wow, they don't care. So even if you're getting the nothings, like, don't quit asking.
Put in the effort. Put in the effort every time.
And if you have kids that acting out, again, this is something I've experienced in my own life.
Your children are flawless.
They're saying, you know, well, this is what I need to do to get their attention. Yeah. And I saw a quote recently that said, if you change the word attention seeking to relationship seeking, that can reframe seeing your kids act out. But even friends or spouses, just, you know, if they start doing things that, you know, they're pushing your buttons, maybe they just want to spend time with you and don't know how to communicate it appropriately.
Well, and if the only way of getting your attention is by doing a certain thing, some intention's better than no intention.
Yeah.
Oy.
Yeah. And with, you know, your wife or spouse, she wants you to notice that she's sad. So when you're like, you okay? She goes, yeah, I'm fine. She wants you to ask or say, no.
If it looks like her head's about to fall off when she says, no, I'm fine, then not fine.
Yeah. So the last thing, this got an exclamation mark.
The last myth?
Part. No.
Oh, the last
mark.
Okay.
Last part in this section.
Vulnerability is letting it all hang out.
Gosh, yes. Brene's birthday basis.
Wordsmith.
Brene Brown is so, awesome. So here's what she said. She said, trust is a product of vulnerability that grows over time and requires work, attention, and full engagement. Trust isn't a grand gesture. It's a growing marble collection.
Love it.
It's not a one and done thing. You
Nope.
gotta have that consistency over a long period of time. And you're not gonna be perfect, but hey, do it often. And you're good.
Work your way.
Myth number 4. We can go it alone.
Ha 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 ha.
I don't need anybody else. I can do it all on my I? Oh,
It makes me think of Dodgeball when he's like, "You can't fire me. I created myself." What? You created yourself. Makes me laugh.
I love when one of my children says, "No, I can do it," and then I know she can't, but I say, "Okay, let me know if you need help."
Mm-hmm.
And I walk away, and I kind of always get where I can sort of see her, at least out of the peripherals. And man, when she knows she needs to come ask me for help, I just, it eats her up. And so I try to just be very nice and be like, "I'm glad you asked for help.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for trying.
Yes.
You did great." But yeah, no, going at it alone is, when is it a good time to do something like that?
0 times.
I don't know. So here is what she equates it to. She talks about if you can't accept help without seeing it as a sign of weakness, then you can't give help without judging that person as being weak.
Oh man.
So how those two can't align. So I can't say, "Brooke, I'm going to help you," and it's not a sign that you're weak, if I also think that you helping me is a sign of me being weak. Like, you can't have both of those. So until
So true.
you recognize that helping others is not them being weak, then you can do that.
Well, it would be silly to think to not ask for help. How did anyone learn anything ever?
Yeah. Do
You
you
were
know
taught.
how many diapers I've changed? Gabby has not changed one herself.
Right.
That jerk.
She needs help.
No, we all would need help. And so she talks about the people in her life that she chooses to be vulnerable to, and that have also helped her in the process of feeling her feelings.
Yeah.
So who are some people that you find that you can be vulnerable to with?
You.
Oh, I was hoping I made the list. I
I'll
didn't know.
be first place. Sorry, Morgan.
My first is Brooke.
Hey, obligated. You were
Coincidence.
obligated to say that. But yeah, I would say groups like that, book study group, CG.
Parents, spouses.
Again, I feel like there are some degrees of vulnerability there too.
Yeah.
Like things I might tell Morgan about certain topics, I wouldn't tell my parents.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, there's things I won't tell you that I'm not going to tell Jacob.
right.
Yeah.
So again,
Yet.
healthy boundaries there.
Not tell Jacob yet. Like, I like to run stuff by you first.
But yeah.
Yeah.
That's just good planning.
Yeah. It's effective, really.
Uh,
And safe.
There we go for
'Cause
all parties
maybe
involved.
I'll say it nicer the second time
Yes,
around.
you do a really good job of talking me down on things.
Well, we're good about, like we said earlier, about the conversation of, do you just want to be mad?
Yes.
Or do you want to hear devil's advocate?
Yes.
Or
Mhm.
what phase are we in?
Yes.
Yeah.
What are we feeling right now? But yeah. So you would say yes, parents, Jacob, me.
That
Yeah.
lamp over there.
There you go. Well, but yeah, we aren't meant to go alone. Like we were created for relationships. So to think that we could do everything ever on our own, that is way too big of an ego.
Yep. She brings it back to the Man in the Arena speech by Teddy Roosevelt, right?
That's right.
And she talks about, again, knowing who these people are the people fighting the battle with you, not
Yeah.
the people in the stands, the critics, all your judgmental people. So again, vulnerability is definitely, what was the first one? Vulnerability was not weakness. Again, talking about how we admire when other people are vulnerable and we recognize it as, wow, you must be brave.
Yes, we need to step up and reciprocate there.
Myth number 2, I don't do vulnerability.
I guess you do.
Yeah, check your emotions. And if you say you don't have any, man.
You know you're a sociopath if.
Oh, she said it. Myth number 3, vulnerability is letting it all hang out. No.
Yep.
Some
There are
people do.
boundaries, healthy boundaries.
Healthy vulnerability has healthy boundaries.
That's right.
By Farron DeRue. Quote that.
Quoted.
Yes, you heard it here first. Myth number 4, we can go it alone.
False.
gosh, you just don't make the kind of progress that you see when you have like a team of people. Can you imagine if we had a team of people doing all this?
Man,
Someday.
one of these days we could hire you.
You know what I was thinking?
Message us.
We've never had a company Christmas party.
That's what we're gonna do right
Yeah.
now. We're gonna sign off and we're gonna go have a company Christmas party.
Yes.
I'm not sure what it'll entail, but
Sleep, coffee,
There we
maybe
go.
both. All right, guys, so that was chapter 2, debunking the vulnerability myths. And next week we'll talk about chapter 3, understanding and combating shame. Is
okay.
that not a teaser? What?
And shame, there is a Brene Brown definition of shame. And once you understand her definition, it makes so much sense.
Yep.
So there's that.
Be sure to tune in next week.
Yeah, be sure to grab our freebie that goes along with this mini series and chime in on Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff.
Pinterest.
Are you gonna say it?
Bye.
Yes.
I'm gonna get
Now
a
you
hat
have to.
that has like B-Y-E-E-E. I don't know how many E's would fit on that.
All right, people. Well, just do it all the way around. Get up.
Oh,
Bye.
a headband. Like
Yes.
air warmer thing.
Yes, I love it.
That'd be great. Okay, we
Seasonal.
gotta go to our Christmas party now.
Bye,
Party
team.
of 2.